Rieccoci qui in diretta con la live streaming all'interno di Hospitality Day e qui nel nostro salottino in questo momento abbiamo un ospite internazionale che è Bram Van Berkel che è il Director of Field Marketing Digital Media di Travel Click. E adesso comunque per chi, io sono sicura che tutti parlerete benissimo in inglese, quindi faremo questo talk show, questa chiacchierata in inglese. We're gonna speak English now, okay? And tell us the name of your speech you had today during Hospitality Day.
Yes, I spoke about scaling online bookings for hotels. It's a very hot topic as hotels are looking to increase their profits and become less reliant of third-party distribution channels.
Yeah. And how was different your speech comparison with the other similar topics?
Okay, yeah, so what I didn't just want to give a mini course in 30 minutes about driving direct bookings because, you know, if you go to Google and you type driving direct bookings, you get a lot of tips already. So I wanted to give a couple of tips or thoughts, ideas that are a little bit outside of what you would normally read about when you read articles like that.
Okay, maybe I translate a little bit.
Sure.
Ok, praticamente lui ci spiegherà un po' nel suo speech di che cosa ha parlato, quindi invece che fare un corso che insomma un po' non ha senso in 30 minuti, ma vuole dare un po' delle idee, dei suggerimenti, dei tips appunto per darvi gli spunti per iniziare a fare qualcosa di diverso. So, just start to give us some tips.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I covered was when you run a digital media campaign, there's always an element of what we call cannibalization. So usually you would get a media report that tells you how many bookings happened, how much revenue you made, what your return on investment was, and that's great. But we know that for some of those bookings, if a user sees an ad and consequently books, the ad didn't actually influence the user because they were going to book anyway. Now we all know that element exists, but we can't really identify to what extent it influences the report. Is it 5% or 50% even? So I explained how that element exists. And on the counter side of that, there's also bookings that are happening because of the campaign, but that we cannot attribute to the media campaign, so we don't show them in the report. So what it boils down to is that whatever you're seeing in your report as an absolute number of direct bookings generated, of revenue made, of return on investment, it's not an absolute number, but it does allow you to identify trends when the numbers go up or down, to put some kind of proportion to the results of the campaign. Exactly, but it's not exact science.
Okay. And can you give us some example about what kind of hotels or I don't know, bed and breakfast, so what kind of guests or clients do you have?
Actually, our clients range throughout all hotel segments and geographies. Myself, I cover the entire world except for US and Canada, where I have a counterpart. But yeah, really all segments of hotels in all types of destinations in essence. I will say that hotels with a higher average booking value, who are located in A or B destinations, longer average lengths of stay, those factors to great performance in digital media. Okay,
so show us some example of what kind of results can get a client thanks to your services, your consultancy.
Sure. Sure.
So we can have an idea.
A couple of applied examples I guess. We work for a group client here in Italy, and we run only a social media campaign for them, but their return on investment performance is roughly around 20 to 1. So for every euro invested, they get 20 in return. That's a stellar number. I would actually even say it's too high.
It's very high.
It's too high because if your return on investment is very high, it basically means that you're leaving opportunity on the table, which you can capture by growing the scale of the campaign. So reducing the average return, but growing the number of bookings, which is actually what impacts your bottom line profit most.
Yeah, it's more interesting.
I would say so, yes.
Okay. And tell us some example about your campaign. So it's about, I don't know, storytelling or what can you use?
No, it's actually very data driven and very tactical. So we start most campaigns depending on the client, but let's take an average client who hasn't really done a lot of activity in the past. We would start with what we call a bottom funnel campaign, targeting the users who are most qualified on the internet. Okay. So that could be in search engines by paid search advertising. It could be through retargeting on display and on social media. And that's a standard starting campaign.
Okay.
And then depending on where the return is at, we will take that campaign and grow it in volume, bringing down that return, like I was just explaining, and drive more volume.
You're gonna start to stalk some digital client, digital guest, okay?
Yeah, a little bit. We don't like to do it too much actually, because you don't want to annoy the client, the guest.
It means like when you have your mobile and you were looking for something that you forgot about it, and then you start looking your mobile and you see again some advertisement, you were looking for that kind of product or
that is what we call remarketing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so how do they know that I was looking for this in this moment? This is
it's a good question.
Stalker,
Definitely. I don't want to call it digital stalker because specifically when it comes to hotels, it's important to not be too aggressive in that type of marketing, because it goes down to the experience, and I always say that the online experience of a hotel or a brand should mimic what the experience is when you enter the hotel.
Yeah.
And the very aggressive remarketing advertising, I always compare it to entering a hotel and constantly having an employee looking over your shoulder, always there. And that's not what you want to experience when you're in a hotel.
Yeah.
So we make sure that doesn't happen.
I agree.
Yeah.
And what kind of social media platforms do you prefer personally?
Yeah, so what's really effective in online advertising for hotels are both Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
We see variations for the exact platform based on geography of the hotel, based on target audience and so on. But in general, the Facebook ads platform that both belong to,
they're together.
They're very powerful. The reason is that when users browse social media, they're impressionable. They're looking for information that triggers them, rather than they're on that site for another purpose. So if you have a very compelling ad, and the user sees it on their phone, they're very likely to interact with it.
Yeah, and just curious to ask you, what do you think about LinkedIn? Because it's a kind of platform that I personally like it in a B2B platform, or hotels that have also the MICE part. Yeah. What do you think about it?
So we actually advertise on LinkedIn on behalf of a number of our clients. And the reason I really like it is because it allows you to very specifically target specific companies or specific roles within companies that can be very effective, especially if you're targeting to drive MICE business. So MICE business, corporate business, also, exactly. So I can target corporate travel planners, I can target event organizers, which drives brand awareness with qualified people.
Yeah, and I think you can have more success when you know the profile that have the power to decide.
Absolutely. I would not use LinkedIn advertising as part of a standard sort of rooms-focused campaign. But if you want to drive MICE business events, it's great. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. And what other kind of suggestions can you give to our hoteliers?
So in terms of suggestions, aside from the two things I already mentioned, I would probably say to use more data than traditionally campaign-generated data when you manage your campaign. And what I mean is that hotels are generally sitting on a lot of information. If you consider your central reservation system, it tells you when you're busy, when you're quiet, what rates you're selling, which room types are popular, and so on. And you can use that in a very applied way in your media campaign by targeting specific periods that you're quiet, by making sure you don't waste money on periods when you're already fully booked. And those are some very, very elementary mechanisms that most hotels and agencies don't use.
Yeah, and you are also a traveler. I imagine you travel a lot because of your work.
Quite a bit, yes.
Yeah, and what kind of travelers are you, Bram?
So it depends if I'm short haul or long haul. So long haul, I consider myself a leisure traveler because my trips are usually 2 weeks. If I go long haul, and in 2 weeks I always have a weekend. So I'd love to explore the destination, see things that probably I won't ever get a chance to see again. When I do short haul travel, I spend a lot of time in hotels and taxis, and unfortunately not so much time in the destinations.
Okay.
So as an example, I was in Ljubljana in Slovenia 2 months ago. It's a beautiful, beautiful town. But I was in and out.
Yeah.
But I did write it down as a little note to self because I want to go back there. Yeah. It's so impressive.
And what kind of hotels do you prefer, or if you prefer other kind of hospitality?
Yeah. Oh, I myself, I'm very much focused on boutique hotels, unique concepts, because it's it's the differences that trigger you and that give you inspiration rather than the next branded property. And I won't name any names, but it's a very static experience. And especially when you travel a lot, you want that variation because you need to feel like you exist.
Yeah. And as we are in Italy, we are in Rimini now. Is it your first time here in Rimini?
Yes, it is.
So what do you expect, and what about the food in Italy?
Yes. So actually, the piadina you recommended, I tried it last night.
Oh, really?
Yes, I had to give that a go straight away. It's delicious.
I'm
no,
okay.
I arrived last night, and I flew into Bologna, and I took a rental car because I could, I love driving through Italy. It's amazing. But then arriving in Rimini as the historic city center where we're staying, it's just incredible. I'd love to hopefully tonight explore a little bit more, and perhaps on a future visit.
Okay. And what have you tried from food, the Italian gastronomy, or have you heard about something that you want to try, taste, experience?
So I've been to Italy a number of times already. So I've been exposed to the national standards. But what I love now is going more regional. So, for example, like you mentioned, the piadina from the region,
the authenticity.
The differences between the local food and the country's dishes. So, my colleagues last night recommended tortellini as being very specific from the region as well. So I enjoyed that.
Okay, great.
Great bolognese sauce. It's nice.
And do you wanna give the last suggestion or the last message to our hoteliers before?
Well, actually, one of the questions you asked me in the preparation was a tip to students specifically.
The students. We have
I'm pretty passionate about that because I also give guest lectures at a hotel management school, and it's something that I really enjoy.
Me too, so I'm very curious to know.
Yeah, exactly. So all I can say is, especially after school and when you start your career, is be very focused on doing any projects you can next to your day job. Because that's where you'll get exposure not only to project management, but especially to different parts of the industry and the business that are not commonly accessible. So if you push yourself forward and brand your sort of personal identity within your company, you'll be able to learn a lot from that. And the first few years, just work really, really hard. Yeah,
and I'm curious to know your experience in a global way, let me say. For example, in Italy, we have, I think, lots of great, amazing students that they look forward to be part of a company to show their value. And from the other part, sometimes it happens also that we have some hoteliers or some tutors. It could be in the food and beverage department or the reception department, whatever. And they don't understand. They need to learn this new job. So maybe they pretend they are able to behave as a normal worker, trained worker, and so they treat them, in a bad way, and so their motivation is going down. So is it the same that happen in other part of Europe or the world, or what you can suggest also in order to tell this young student, well, you could behave in this way if it happens this, and what you can say also to hoteliers or employees that have to deal with young students?
Sure. So I see two different types of people management styles. One is very hierarchical, very what I would call Generation X, leadership with a whip.
Do this and do that.
Exactly, very micromanaging. And then there's the other style, which is more empowering. So giving somebody a goal, but letting themselves figure out how they get there. Now, in my mind, that's where you learn the most, but you cannot get there without having learned the basics first, which is usually what you learn under micromanagement. You learn to very consistently deliver a service or a product. So I would encourage students to find, after they've learned the basics and are good at that, to find a culture that is very open, where they're stimulated to find their own way. And it's quite geographically spread out.
Okay, so it's the same, it's not only in Italy, but also...
if I compare Northern Europe versus Southern Europe, you'll find that Southern Europe is more hierarchical and Northern Europe is more empowering. So travel, go international, it's not just where you learn languages, it's also where you learn to work with and for different cultures.
Okay, tell your audience where you're from and where you live now.
Okay, I'm from the Netherlands originally, and
We can see a little bit.
yeah, probably. And via Australia, Cyprus, I now moved to Spain a couple of months ago.
From Australia to say, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
So we're now in Barcelona.
Okay, so thank you very much, Bram, for your contribution, your value that you are giving to this kind of event. And I look forward to follow you again and to know more about what you do and how you do it.
Great.
And so let's see what happens.
Thank you so much, and hopefully see you next year.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very
Same.
much. Bye bye.
Grazie.